Yay! You have decided to homeschool your child. Congratulations! Look forward to more freedom and flexibility. But is there any regulations on homeschooling that you need to be aware of? Do you need to seek approval from the government? This video is answering this question in the context of Singapore based on my own experience in 2021-2022. I will also share exactly how I have applied for homeschooling, plus all detailed steps before we can officially start homeschooling. The questions to answer is who needs to seek approval to homeschool in Singapore, how to apply, what are the requirements, and what is the timeline from application to approval. Number 1, who needs to seek approval to homeschool in Singapore? So let's refer to the official source, which is the Singapore Ministry of Education website. The Compulsory Education Act states that all Singaporean citizens born after 1 Jan 1996 and living in Singapore must attend a national primary school. Now that means who needs approval? Definitely the child has to be a Singaporean citizen, but lives in Singapore and born after 1996, and this only applies if he's of primary 1 to primary 6 equivalent of education only, because Compulsory Education Act only applies to primary students. But who needs no approval then? If the child is a Singapore citizen but lives abroad, then no need approval. Child is a Singapore citizen and undertaking secondary education, no need, because the Compulsory Education Act only applies to primary students only. The third one is more obvious. The child is not a Singaporean citizen, right? So if an expat living in Singapore does not need approval, that means does not need to seek exemption from the Compulsory Education Act to homeschool. Number 2, how to apply for approval. What's the first step to application? The first step is actually quite a simple one. Just send an email to this address, moe_ceu@moe.gov.sg, just to simply express the intention to say, I would like to homeschool my child this age. What is the next steps? Please advise. The third one, what are the requirements? Here we're looking at the website under the Compulsory Education Act exemptions. Here you will see actually they list down the key requirements already. Now this is based on my experience. What is the pre-approval documents and information required? The first one is you have to have very valid and concise reasons. My first one is actually the flexibility, because me and my husband, we plan to travel frequently around the world. Let's say, in 1 year, 3 months, we plan to stay. Let's say every 3 months we plan to move location. One of them will be Singapore. And so this kind of flexibility, this kind of travel arrangement is best really to homeschool my child. Otherwise, we will have to, really argue with the school. How can we do this, right? And also potentially in the next 1 to 2 years, we plan to migrate to another countries, which we not 100% certain yet. So because of that, we want to just get this exemption and all the paperwork done first. Second is bonding. It's really to enhance the bonding. Every child only has one childhood, and I really plan to maximize to make full use of his childhood time with him. The third is actually have a best education plan tailored and personalized for my boy, who is kinesthetic learner, so he learns best hands-on, and I think as a parent I'm best equipped to provide him this education plan. The last one is we believe we have the resources both in terms of financial, because one parent, the homeschooling parent, has to be full-time 100%, so they cannot take on any employment or business. So because of that, financially you have to be quite strong. Second is, I am passionate and I do have some experience in teaching. So in that sense, right, I think these are very valid reasons. When you think of the reasons, please put yourself in the shoes of the assessing officer. Make it very, very hard for them to reject your reasons, because the reasons are the first thing that they will assess whether your application goes through or not. Second is the curriculum plan for each of the 6 years of primary education. Curriculum or teaching plan. You need to provide this for all the key subjects, namely English, mother tongue, in our case is Chinese, maths, science, and very importantly, character and citizenship education. This is an example of the curriculum plan. Because I'm not allowed to share the template, so For example, this is for English and just specifically for primary 1 and skills to be developed is writing. It's a very small subset of the whole curriculum plan, by the way, just to give you a sense, but this is the level of detail that you need to provide. Skills to be developed, for example, encourage simple short writing. Learning outcome, able to write a simple paragraph of at least 5 sentences to recount appropriately sequenced events based on guiding pictures using correct grammars. And the resources you have to be very, very specific and clear, and you have to put a title of the book. The Right Way P1 is the example that I use. The key here is to be very, very concise, very clear, and very, very specific in your submission, and it has to be measurable, because at the end of the year, every year, we have to submit a progress report showing how the child has done. It's like a report card in school. So this, measurable, is easier to assess in the later part of the year. Another very key is to show progression from one year to the next, like P1, primary 1 to primary 2. For example, primary 2, you have to, the learning outcomes in this case has to be able to write 3 paragraphs that flows with structure that makes sense, with more descriptive language, with more widely used vocabulary, for example. So it is very key that they are looking for progression. The next one is timetable. Here, what you need to provide is a proposed timetable. So it have to be perfect, but what they are looking for is, do you allocate enough time to teach each of the key subjects, especially character and citizenship education? And also, do you allocate enough time for rest and play as well, right? So that really also they want to make sure that you are raising a holistic child and not just someone who's academically inclined, right? And also you need to also show some time for socialization with other children. Next one is resumes of homeschooling parents, including original certificates, because original certificates is required when they do the home visit, which I will explain later. So because I am not a teacher, I'm not not teacher qualified, I have only a degree in economics, it is very, very key to also showcase any other relevant teaching or coaching experience. In this case, I have a nutrition certificate, which I show as proof as well. Why? Because they also need to know that you have the skill to impart knowledge to someone else. So it is very, very key to show this if you have, because I've heard of other parents who had to undergo some education to teach young children as part of the approval requirements. So try your best. If you have to showcase, definitely think very hard from all your past life if you have any. Next one is identity documents and photo, which are self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but I want to talk a bit more on commitment declaration. So definitely, as part of the preliminary assessment, they have shared with me that the homeschooling parent has to be 100% full-time and also full energy, so full on. So because of that, I'm not able to take on employment or business. Before this, I was an entrepreneur, just starting out on my health coaching. So as part of that, I need to declare in writing that I will not be continuing my business. So this is an example of what I wrote as part of the submission. Next one, I just want to highlight, right, there's a section below this exemption requirements that says children who are homeschooled must sit for the primary school living examinations in 4 subjects at standard level, etc. I just want to highlight all these are post-approval requirements, so don't confuse yourself and don't worry too much about this, but definitely it's good to know that homeschooling children are subject to higher level of passing of higher level of standards compared to normal school children, which is in the second point, because they have to meet the PSLE benchmark pegged at 33rd percentile of all students. For other normal school children is 50th percentile. So they just want to make sure that the homeschooling child is really, really, really qualified. The next thing is that home visit. Home visit is something that they will schedule. They really want to, two officers will come to my home and they really want to speak to us. It's about 3 hours long. They really want to check for a few things, authenticity. They want to really talk to you. In that sense, they assess whether are you the one who really filled in the application? Do you know what you are talking about? And next one is passion. They want to see how passionate you are really in taking on this homeschooling commitment. They also talk to the child to see how keen is he actually on homeschooling. They also take a look at the environment to see whether you have the correct environment. The next one is timeline to approval. So we started on 11 December 2021. We expressed intention by first sending a simple email, right? Just to say, I would like to homeschool, advise on next step. 2 days later, the MOE already replied and asked for some basic information, including name, citizenship of the child, and contact number. 1 day later, they actually gave me a call to do a preliminary assessment. They actually asked for reasons for homeschooling, understand my qualification, and they also shared with me the detailed requirements, right? So again, to just make sure, are we serious about this homeschooling? And on the same day, I actually wrote back in writing, confirming our intention to homeschool. Same day, then, they actually sent me the detailed requirements, including the templates that I need to fill in. They give me 2 weeks timeline to submit all the documents before they can start processing the application. And I took the full 2 weeks, 14 days to complete the application, making sure all documents are in order, and then I submit the requirements online. They're very efficient. 1 day later, an inspector is assigned to process my application. But because it's the year-end holidays, right, he told me he might take longer, but still, it's only 8 days later, he advised me on the revision required, which is on 6th Jan. Here, because of the very detailed number of revision that I need to do, mainly because I wasn't specific enough in a lot of the entries, so I took 3 weeks, 21 days, and to submit the revised documents. And then 7 days later, they already completed reviewing and they scheduled a home visit, which is planned for 14th of February, 11 days later. But unfortunately, the family is down with COVID, so that has been moved to 11th of March, which is 25 days later. And then finally, we got our approval on 25th of March, which is 14 days later. So all in all, you can see, right, that MOE is very efficient because the number of days they took to respond is the one in pink. The number of days that I took to respond is the one in white. So total is 3 to 4 months, but I think for other people who are more efficient, perhaps it can only take 3 months. Plus, I was a bit slow in my application. Because of that, right, actually, because I only started my application in December, my boy has to attend primary school first for the first few months before this approval is granted. But if you don't want, the right way is actually to submit this application before October so that they can have the time to process everything. Now, I hope this helps you in your application, right? Thank you so much for your